So throughout the Gospel of Matthew, you have these constant insertions that are capitalizing on details for his audience to make sure that they know this guy Jesus is this person who is the person you're waiting for. He's fulfilling the Davidic reign. He's the prophet like Moses that's predicted back in the Torah, and he's accomplishing these things.
Is this what you mean when you say the Bible is written for you but not to you?
I like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it has a different audience, right? And so understanding the context helps you. That's why the German rationalists in the 18th and 19th centuries they did the wrong thing. They said, this is how we would write, therefore. And they didn't look back because there's linguistic and cultural levels to it.
Yeah.
Right? So you could just translate the text directly, but it's context that's going to tell you the difference between a butt dial and a booty call. Even though they might be the same words in Greek or Hebrew, right?
Yes.
But you could read that and you could be completely misled.
A butt dial and a booty call. Completely different things. Yeah, so there's versions of that in the ancient literature.
Oh, yeah, totally. And this is with everything.
Some guy is just guessing at that point and just making an inference.
In terms of today?
Interpretation.
Yeah. Well, you study the ancient culture. So fortunately, we have the ability to look at things and understand idioms.
Yeah.
And people talk about stuff. And that gives you a frame of reference.
I'm sure they're using slang.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. All the time.
Apparently, there's all these issues with biblical translations as they're trying to translate it in the 20th century to all these different cultures. And when they're putting in their native tongue, there's one specific that I remember. I did this field trip to Wycliffe, and it's a Bible translator in Florida. Have you heard of it? I don't know.
Yeah.
And one of the things in this one specific tribal culture in Africa, there's this idea of Jesus knocking on the heart. But in that culture, thieves knock. And so they're like, okay, we can't make it knocking because then they're going to think Jesus is a thief.
Yeah.
And so what they did is they would cough or something like that. They would clear their throat to indicate that there was someone on the other side of their hut. And so they had to translate it to Jesus coughs at the door of the heart or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And that when you're translating things, you have to be super specific to the culture that you're translating to.
So this is the difference between what's called a formal equivalence translation and a dynamic equivalent translation.
Yeah, this is a dynamic equivalent translation.
Yeah, so dynamic is the thought for thought idea, right? So in the Gospel of Luke, in the Greek, there's this line where Jesus says, let these words sink into your ears. Right? That's exactly what Jesus says. Let these words sink into your ears. So if you have a dynamic equivalence like the New International Version of the Bible in English, they're going to say, listen carefully to what I'm about to say. Because that's what that means. But that's not what Jesus said, right? So whereas the New American Standard Bible, the NASB, is more of a formal equivalence, they're literally going to say, let these words sink into your ears, because that's the words that Jesus spoke. So it's the question of because people always ask me, what's the best translation?
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to that. The best Bible is the one you're going to read. So just figure out the one that you're going to read and then read it.
New International Version, baby.
There you go. So let these words sink into your ears. And this gets tricky because you have turns of phrase. So one of the most quoted verses in the Bible is a version of Exodus 34:6. Where Moses goes up on Mount Sinai and God says that he is a gracious God, compassionate, steadfast and abounding love, and the Hebrew says long of nose. And you're like, what? Long of nose? Well, it's a Hebrew idiom meaning slow to anger.
Are they?
Yeah. That's what that means. So
how do we know that that's what he meant?
So
what else does it mean?
So Hebrew is a Semitic language. We have other Semitic languages. Get out of here. This guy. Okay. So here's why I use that illustration. Even the most formal equivalent.
Okay, how would you say someone just got a long nose back in the day? How would they say that? Probably the same way.
Well,
how do you know it wasn't just a descriptor?
A descriptor?
Yeah.
Because why would you describe God as long of nose? So we have other examples within other Semitic languages and portrayals of it.
I got a fucking idea, too. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. But this is why...
Jesus had the golden hair. But they probably were describing the way his hair looked.
That was good.
This is just God. Oh, you mean
Jesus is God.
Long.
In my religion, Jesus is God. I don't know about you.
Yeah. We're on the same page.
Oh, we are. Okay. Okay.
But I use that example to say, like, even the most formal equivalent isn't going to translate like that because it doesn't make any sense.
Right. So, but long of nose, you think that they were just using a common...
It's an idiom.
It's an idiom.
Yeah.
This guy's an idiom, dude.
It's not like an insane...
No. But so Hebrew is a
Like
Semitic language.
if like a Chinese god was described as like small of eye, I don't think it would be like I don't think it would be an idiom, right?
Like, it's an idiom for good at math.
One could say that, or you could be like, oh, this might have been a descriptor.
I just picked up on why you guys are laughing.
3 days later.
I'm slow. Yeah.
No, he's on Jesus time.
That's right. Yeah.
And he's back.
3 days and 3 nights.
He's risen.
We just resurrected your sense of humor.
I like it.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Like maybe it was just a description. Like,
But if everyone's got big noses, then it wouldn't be a description. You know what I mean?
I mean,
If everyone's got big noses,
Not
then
everyone.
But if you're God, you want to have the big.
Who are you saying has a big nose?
that's what I was, Italians or something.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Jews.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
So wouldn't the Jewish God also have that?
Well, so this is an idiom that we find in other Semitic languages. So like Akkadian and Aramaic, and like so this is the language found.
Languages that are in the region.
Yeah.
Where the Jews live. You're not seeing the parallel here. You're a historian. You got to know about this.
Well,
Yeah,
I
understand
don't-
the context.
You got
to understand the context,
know
dude.
who he's speaking to. He's saying he's one of y'all.
I mean, maybe. Contextually, no. Listen, leave it up to the historians.
Okay. Okay.
Comedically, yes.
Comedically, yes. Wait.
Just because Ari Shafir looks like that today doesn't necessarily mean
Okay.
Ari Shafir.
Yeah. So
First
you need
century
the proper.
BC look like that.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, I get you.
We need to get Delvin here, dude. We're getting on the line right now.
Yeah. We're getting close. Okay. All right. So you were saying. So
Dynamic formal equivalence translation stuff. That's how do we start this? You brought it.
you were talking about
the translation of.
You just said there are a bunch of long noses running out.
Get out of here.
Looking for Jesus.
I'm gonna kick you out of your own podcast.
Okay, sorry. I thought it was disrespectful.
So this issue runs up all the time.
I thought it was disrespectful.
It was
like the
disrespectful.
long noses are trying to crucify him. I'm like, you can't call
No,
him.
I didn't say that.
Wesley, you said something like that, and we're like, we got to put a stop to this.
Slow to anger people.
And then you were like, no, it's an idiom for the time.
Abounding in
very
steadfast
patient.
love and faithfulness.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
What language was that?
Huh?
Did you speak? What language was that?
Abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness.
Bro, I had
said it
no
quickly,
clue.
and we were very like, "What?"
was
the
that another window moment? Just now.
That's why I stopped.
Did you understand what he said?
I thought he was speaking Hebrew. I had no clue.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I
it was
appreciate
Aramaic.
what you
Just did
said.
Busta Rhymes, you know. Just kicking it to you real fast.
Okay.
I twisted on you.
Let's center ourselves.
So he was talking about like translation issues, and that happens all the time.
Yeah.
And like you're translating the Bible into Peruvian in a culture that like doesn't know what a donkey is. Do you then say it's a llama? Or is that like taking too much liberty with the text? But this is stuff we run into all the time. So this is why the best commentary on the Hebrew Old Testament and Greek New Testament is going to be the Hebrew Old Testament and Greek New Testament.
and the Greek New Testament.
Yeah. But there are things that we learn about these languages. Like the King James Bible is translated between 1603 and 1611. There were terms that they just didn't know what they meant, and they transliterated them. We now know what they are because we've, like, through
And then
study.
have they adjusted the King James Bible since?
Well, no, you don't. Well, new translations do. There's a new King James and KJV.
Yeah.
And they would. So First Chronicles 26:18.
Yeah.
In the King James Bible, it says at Parbar westward, ford the causeway, and to it Parbar. You're like, what does that mean, right? But if you read the NIV, this guy's favorite translation.
That shit is
Yeah.
light
The
work.
new Indian
It's
version.
lit. That's right.
Yeah.
It says, as for the court to the west, there were two at the court and four at the road itself.
I didn't even know what that meant.
So Parbar is not an Elizabethan English term. It's just a transliteration of a Hebrew word that they were like, we don't know what this is, so we're just going to call it a Parbar.
Like croissant.
Yeah. That's a...
I think he's right on this.
Okay, we'll go with it.
Yeah, we didn't have a word for that type, like a what
Sure.
gay bread, so we just called it croissant, right? Like we don't have an English word for that. Yeah, so we just go, okay, let's just call it their thing.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
We should just leave it in Latin.
Why do you guys look at me like I'm dumb? It's the exact same thing that the English did, right? They didn't have a word for it, so they're like, all right, just leave it there.
Yeah, cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But in like the best version of it, we want you to appropriate Christianity. That is what Christians would hope, that everybody appropriates it.
Sure, but then we figure out what the word is and it's fine.
And then it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm jumbled up here. We still haven't figured out your discrepancies in the Bible.
No, I think we kind of.
That was the only one? What were the other things?
Well, no, so
you have a biblical scholar here right now. He's a historian. He benches 240 for 12 reps.
You're lowballing me.
Come on.
What do you put up there?
285 for 5, easy.
You could have carried that cross for days, bro.
Yeah, right?
You guys got a bench press here?
When no.
Oh, okay.
What? Why were you about to throw something out for us?
We could test it.
315.
315?
I've done 404 for one.
Whoa.
What?
Nah.
Body of Christ.
Jesus.
Yeah.